So we'd like to welcome everybody to this morning's study. We're still in Genesis, and we're bouncing between 42 and 43. We may go even back a little further than that. But we're reaching the high point of the story of Joseph's life, where he is about to reunite knowingly with his brothers this time. He's reunited once before, only that he knew it. They didn't. They're about to find out in a very strange way. I've heard this taught many times, and I'm sure that many of you have too, that Genesis and the story of Joseph shows God's hand in the shadows of life. I understand the sentiment. I don't subscribe to the philosophy. I don't think that God is in the shadows. I believe that God is light and that he dwells in light. We are the ones many times in the shadows, sometimes willfully so. Depending on what we put up between ourselves and that radiating light, that outraying of God, which is his word, and the light that he brings to it from that word. And we've got 11 boys here who are about to find the same thing out. That God never really stopped speaking and he never really stopped working, but we may occasionally stop paying attention. And that's where we get into trouble. Well, let me bring that down to an even more finer point. That is where I get into trouble. So let's start where Joseph is having them brought to his house. He tells his steward when he sees them coming back for food, you go out, you tell them to come to my house, and I'm going to be there at noon. In verse 26 of chapter 43, and when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house and bowed themselves to him to the earth. That's the second time now that these boys have bowed down. It is the first time that they've done it while Benjamin is with them. So, I want to stop at this point. So we're going to dig a little deeper. We are. You remember the second dream that Joseph had of the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowing down to him? And I asked you, if you recall, at that time, how could that be possible if the moon represents Rachel, his mother, who is already dead? Mm-hmm. How is she ever going to be able to bow? Jacob will. And in fact, they both have at this point. Remember when we were studying the life of Abraham, and it's talking about Abraham's seed, that there is a spiritual and a physical seed. And when you see a dream and its manifestation, before it's manifested, its meaning is always spiritual. When it manifests, it shows you that the time is at hand, that God has foretold. And that's what's happening here, physically and spiritually. And it works this way with the spiritual seed. Rachel is there in Benjamin. She's part of none of those other boys. That's why it took two dreams. Your sheaves bowing down to my sheaf, and then the second dream, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars. The sun and the moon are both present in that 11th star in Benjamin. You remember back in the garden when God says to the serpent, I'll put enmity between thy seed and the seed of the woman. The woman has a seed. It's a seed that she receives. And that's why she's present in Benjamin, and it is still Abraham's seed.
Well, that's a stretch.
Now, they're going to bow a couple more times, but that was the second time. And he asked them of their welfare, and said, is your father well, the old man of whom you spake? Is he yet alive? Does this intrigue you at all? Now think of where they are. They're not home anymore. They're in Egypt. They're in the home, and I imagine it's some home, of a man who is second only to Pharaoh in his power and in the honor that's given to him. And he's asking, how's your old man? If you went to the White House, I suppose anybody would ask you that question, for those of you whose fathers are still alive. They might ask me about my older brother and whether or not the FBI caught him yet. I don't see these as standard questions at all. These are very personal questions. Should have been a hint to them. And they answered, thy servant our father is in good health, he is yet alive. And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. That's the third time that they've done it. And it's the second time that the second dream has come to pass. Physically. Question, are they aware of it?
Aware of what?
Of the vision coming to pass?
Of the
Oh,
dreams,
no.
you mean?
Of the dream. Now, here's the thing, because Joseph only told them the dream. It's the brothers and Jacob that said, oh, wait a minute, what do you mean by telling us this? You think we're going to worship you? You think we're going to bow down and serve you? They gave him the interpretation. They knew the interpretation as well as he did. But he's the only one that's seeing it happen because he recognizes them and they don't recognize him. All right? Does that remind you of someone who once said, if you realized to whom you were speaking, you would ask me for a drink of water? See the type? And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin. This is the one he's been looking for. His mother's son. See Rachel there now?
No, I'm having a hard time with that, Jake.
He is the only one that represents
I
Rachel.
understand that,
Okay.
but I am having a hard time understanding that that's the sun or the moon or whatever. I'm having a hard time.
Jacob tells us that's what it is. Me and your mother bow down and worship you. And he
Right.
rebuked him.
But what I'm saying is I'm having a hard time saying that Benjamin is Rachel.
Okay. I didn't say is Rachel. I said she's present in him genetically.
Okay.
He gets no more of his genetic input from Jacob than he did from his mother. He and Benjamin, and they're the only two that share it.
Right?
This could not have happened until Benjamin comes down to Egypt. That's why he had him brought down. All right, do you believe that Paul was telling us the truth when he said that Levi paid tithes in Abraham when Abraham offered a tenth to Melchizedek? Because he was still in the loins of his father, right? The seed goes both ways. It works like this. Children are hereditary. If your parents didn't have children, you probably won't either. His parents did.
Yeah, probably won't, Jake.
His parents did. And they both contribute genetic material in the physical. And that dream was going to manifest physically. And Jacob knew it, and because he said he rebuked him, but he observed the saying. Now Jacob isn't here at this point. He's not been brought down yet. But I'll tell you what, I have a very strong suspicion that had he been there, he would have known the manifestation because he's the one that gave it to the interpretation to Joseph. How else can it come to pass?
I don't know.
Do you mean that it wouldn't?
Huh?
You mean that it wouldn't?
No, I'm not saying it wouldn't. I just,
I'm not asking that you agree with me, but here's what I will ask. If this is going to come to pass, this vision, this dream that Joseph had and that Jacob interpreted to him, it has to come to pass in the life of Jacob and Joseph.
right.
You have 7 chapters left. Show me where else it may manifest. Because it does. This word is true.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that you're saying it isn't. Don't get me wrong there. And this is not one of the signs that God lays down that's laying on the surface of the rock. This is hidden manna, and this is water from the rock. Just walking by, you may not see it, but it's there. To my
I
eyes.
just have to think about it.
I encourage you to think about it. He lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom you spake unto me? And he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. Now it's getting real personal. And if I were Benjamin, I'd be standing there and I'm thinking, how does he mean son? I have a feeling that Benjamin knows who his father is. And Joseph made haste. Now watch this. For his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and that's singular. It's singular, his brother. Not brothers, brother. It's Benjamin is the one that he's yearning for. And he sought where to weep, and he entered into his chamber and wept there. And he washed his face and went out and refrained himself, and, excuse me, and said, set on bread. Now watch verse 32. And they set on for him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians which did eat with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. They're not going to hang out with anybody who's a shepherd beneath them. I wonder what they would have done had these Egyptians realized that the one who's sitting by himself is also a Hebrew. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, the youngest according to his youth. The men marveled at one another. Now, why would they do that? Why would they marvel? And what are they marveling at?
That
He
he
knows
would
what
sit
year
him that way.
He knows what?
He knows what order they should
Yep.
be.
Could have been a mistake. Could have been a random.
Well, they've had they've had several clues.
Big clues. Now, he sets them off in the order of their birth order. And counting Joseph, who's sitting by himself, there are 12 brothers, but there are 11 that are sitting in front of him. If this were to happen randomly, what are the chances? We got a math teacher right here. How would you figure that?
1 over 11 factorial.
Yes, it works out to this. A statistician told me this. This is not my math. 1 chance in 39,917,000 that he got it right if he was guessing. This is a man. This is a man who's not guessing. And he took and sent messes unto them from before him, but Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. Now this part, that last sentence, is part of Joseph's plan. And this is another thing where you've got water in the rock and you've got hidden manna. Because unless you know a little Hebrew, you're going to miss this. That word merry, that's a very specific Hebrew theological term. It means he got them drunk.
What,
Got them
Merry.
repeat that. Where's
They
the-
drank and were merry with him. That's the
34.
last sentence of verse 34. They were merry with him.
It might not have.
Okay.
Merry is,
That's what I
the
wanted to
Hebrew
know.
word is shakar, and it means he got him drunk, and it is an intensive verb and an intensive adjective. You can't miss it in Hebrew. It's not like they were beside themselves with mirth. No, the alcohol was inside themselves with all the effects of drunkenness. Now,
Well, wouldn't it be kind of,
sneaky?
no, wouldn't they think that was kind of unusual for this guy to sit with them and,
It certainly would be, it would be a usual thing to serve alcohol at a feast, yes. Both in Egypt and in Canaan. And let's not forget that the first alcoholic beverage was probably found in, or discovered in Egypt, and it was probably beer, not wine. They're probably drinking both, and their wine, their beer was a wheat beer, by the way, not a barley beer. Barley, that was peasant food.
oh,
What was Noah drinking then?
Noah had wine, there's no question about that. But Noah was not a civilization. This is. I don't know if they, I don't know that they had.
He just said that there was alcohol there.
I know it, but he said this is probably the first
Discovered, they didn't dig up Noah's wine bottle.
Well,
They
discovered,
have
discovered,
pharaohs, right?
discovered is probably the wrong
Egyptians.
word, and that would be totally my fault. This is the first indication where we see it, where it is part of a social interaction.
Yeah,
Toasts would have been given and responded to. Now, if you have 11 honored guests, by the time you get to the 11th toast, you're going to cry. And there's a reason why he set the wine on, because the story doesn't stop. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sack with food as much as they could carry, put every man's money in his sack's mouth, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and he scored money, and he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. And he speaks that only to the steward while his brothers are gone. And he keeps them there. Now they start at noon. They go till night, and now he gets them up and commands them to leave early the next day. Now what shape do you think they're in? You think they're gonna be out there and untying those sewn wheat sacks and, no, they're just good. They're gonna start on their wandering way. And as soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses, and when they were gone out of the city, and not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward, follow after the men, and when thou dost overtake them, say unto them, wherefore have you rewarded evil for good? Is not this it in which my Lord drinketh, and whereby he divineth? Ye have done evil in so doing. Now I'm going to stop there for just a minute, and I want to throw out my personal view again, and this may upset you, Linda. I have pored over commentaries on this verse, and they say that they indicate that Joseph used the cup for divining.
for what?
For-
Oh, divining.
That's what it says here.
Yeah. Do you notice that Joseph is not making a statement? He tells the steward to ask his brothers a question. Don't you realize? Joseph isn't saying he used it to divine, and the steward isn't saying it. Joseph is finding out a couple of things. He wants to know, and he's going to find out very, very clearly how deeply into them is ingrained the Canaanitic false worship. Joseph knows the stories of the idols that follow Rachel and Jacob from Padan Aram. He knows that story. Because Joseph is a boy by the time that they are when they are finally leaving Shechem to go to Hebron, when they're heading to Bethel first, and Jacob says to his sons and to his, everybody else, okay, you get rid of the gods, the strange gods, you break off the earrings, you change your clothes. You remember that? Jacob knows about that, and he knows the influence that it has, and he knows why his father said it. He wants to see if there's any lingering effect of that. So he's going to bring that up. Now, he's not stating that he divined them. And he overtook them, and he spake unto them these same words. And they said unto him, wherefore, saith my Lord these words, God forbid that thy servant should do according to this thing. Behold, the money which we found in our sacks' mouths we brought again to thee out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of thy Lord's house silver or gold? Careful now, watch what they say. With whomsoever of thy servants it be found, let him die, and we also will be our Lord's bondsmen. Look how rash that is. And who has said that once before? That's what Jacob said.
Oh,
to
said
Laban.
about when Red Hill to Laban.
Oh yeah, we'll offer up whoever stole it, and we'll kill him right here in front of you. And he said, now also let it be according unto your words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant, and you shall be blameless. See the difference? They then speedily took down every man who sat to the ground, and opened every man his sack, and they searched and began at the eldest and left at the youngest. There's that first order
Once again, they know the order, yeah.
And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. And they rent their clothes, and laid at every man his ass, and returned to the city. And Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there, and they fell down before him on the ground. That's the fourth manifestation of that dream. Now I want you to notice, for anybody paying attention, Benjamin is there. Now, I want you also to notice that verse 14 starts with, and Judah and his brethren. That's not the birth order. Ordinarily, Reuben would speak for them, but Reuben has lost the birthright.
Yep.
And Simeon, and we don't know how, but Simeon has displeased Jacob big time.
Yeah.
Judah is the one who speaks. Now, he doesn't speak yet, but they're beginning to show you who has the authority to speak with his brother. And Judah's brother came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there. And they fell before him on the ground, and Joseph said unto him, What deed is this that thou hast done? Wot ye not that such a man as I can certainly divine? Again, it is a question. It is not a statement. And he's asking them, what do you think? And Judah said, What shall we say unto my Lord? What shall we speak? Or how shall we clear ourselves? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are my Lord, thy Lord's servants. Behold, we, and he also with whom the cup is found. And he, that's Joseph, said, God forbid that I should do so. But the man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant. And as for you, go up in peace to your father. You remember Judah was the one that worked out the financial arrangement of the sale of Joseph? Wait, let's not kill him. We can make a little money on this. And look what Judah is going to say now. Then Judah came near unto him and said, O my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not thine anger burn against thy servant, for thou art even as Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, Have ye a father or a brother? And we said unto my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one, and his brother is dead. They believed he was.
Yeah.
And he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. Now you notice when Judah said, and when the brothers are all saying that God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. They're talking about two different things. They're being questioned about a silver cup. They're remembering 20 pieces of silver.
Well, and it's funny because he asked him, do you have a father? I mean, they just told him that. He even asked them, how is your father?
That is true. And when they first were down, and then go back, there's nothing recorded in Genesis of the conversation, of their conversation, where it says that Joseph asked them anything about Jacob or Benjamin. But when they get back, and they're explaining what happened to Jacob, they're saying that he asked.
Okay, because it says, yeah,
And as
he
they
asked if he's still
As
alive.
they rehearse this going on, Joseph doesn't deny it. So there's room to read it either way, to read it.
Mm-hmm.
The result, no matter how you read that, is going to be
It's the same, yeah.
They have a father. Joseph knows they have a father. He wants them down there. He wants their younger brother down there. He wants the whole family down there because God
Exactly.
wants them out of Canaan. And that's another reason, if you want to see God working in broad daylight, the fact that the Egyptians can't stand the Hebrews, there's a reason for that, and God's behind that too. He wants them insulated in Egypt as long as they can be from pagan influence.
Yeah.
And thou saidst unto thy servant, my Lord asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said unto my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one, and his brother is dead. And he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. Left of his mother? Coming in a little more focused. Thou saidst unto thy servant, Bring him down unto me, that I may set my eyes upon him. And we said unto my Lord, The lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Who's talking?
Judah still.
Okay. The one who sold it. And he's speaking it to the one he sold and doesn't know it yet. And thou said unto thy servants, Except your youngest brother come down with you, you shall see my face no more. And it came to pass, when we came unto thy servant my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, Go again and buy us a little food. And we said, We cannot go down. If our youngest brother be with us, then we will go down. For we may not see that man's face except our youngest brother be with us. And thy servant, my father, said unto us, you know that my wife bare me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn in pieces, and I saw him not since. And if you take this also from me, and mischief befall him, you shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, still Judah talking, right? And the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, it shall come to pass when he seeth that the lad is not with us, that he will die. And thy servant shall bring down the gray hairs of thy servant our father with sorrow to the grave. For thy servant, now he's speaking of himself, became surety for the lad unto my father, saying, if I bring him not unto thee, then I will bear the blame to my father forever. Now is the question. Verse 33. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, the bondsman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me, lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father? That's what Joseph's been waiting to hear. And he gets an earful. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren, and he wept aloud. And the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brother, I am Joseph, doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence.
Yeah, they were.
I believe ESV says terrified. I know Holman does. Yeah, they're troubled. And Joseph said unto his brothers, come near to me, I pray you. Now, as being next to Pharaoh, they're not going to come close to him. You do not approach a prince of the blood familiarly. So they're going to be off at a distance. In the meantime, he's not bearded the way they are. He's not dressed the way they are. He's not even speaking the way they are until he speaks this little sentence right here. Now he's asking them to come closer because he wants them to see his facial features, and he'll get even closer than that. He fell upon...
So you're saying in verse 3 that he's actually speaking Hebrew?
That's just what I was
Yes.
gonna say, he's
Yeah.
actually speaking their language.
And that's why he had everybody else get out of there.
Yeah, yeah,
The Egyptians are not aware that he's Hebrew.
right.
He starts spouting Hebrew when all the time he's talked to a
Through
Semitic people is through
interpreter.
an interpreter, yeah. And Joseph said unto his brother, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves, that you sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. Now, we know the story of how Joseph got down there. Would you say that's God acting in the shadow? That was right out there in the plain, cold, clear light of day. Abraham had the prophecy that his seed would go down to a country and he'd serve them 400, they'd serve him 400 years and he'd bring them out with a mighty hand. They're sending him down there. We really believe that God is unaware, that he's sort of staggering around, and the wings of of the stage of a play that's being worked out. No, he's the director. He's placing all these people by his own foreknowledge and determinate counsel.
But it wasn't fun for Joseph by any means.
Oh, God didn't
No.
promise him any fun. How much fun did he promise you?
Right.
What he promised you was peace.
And
Yeah.
Joseph did have that.
Yeah, peace I give unto you,
I
not the
mean,
world.
what I think is interesting too, Joseph didn't just let things happen to him either.
Yeah,
I mean-
you're exactly right.
He worked to be the best he could wherever he was.
He
He
accepted
worked his
it.
way to the top. He accepted it. He had struggles, and he actually asked people to change his station. Don't forget me when you know, I mean, so it wasn't like he was just like, just letting God move. I mean, he was using his gray matter too.
Well,
Exactly.
He's taking the advice that we get in the Psalms, and that is to avoid a little folding of the hands and a closing
Yeah.
of the eyes. You know, he's working. But
Right.
he's working with far better grace in that situation than I think I could have done. He doesn't whine, he doesn't complain.
But now
Well, he
once,
does, not why, but he does complain. He's like, this is not fun. Don't forget me. I want out of here.
Well, there's that, but what he's doing is he's telling the truth. He's not whining.
That's true.
He's not, oh, woe is me, I'm in the same boat you are.
True.
but Jay, all along you've said that he has had,
God willing.
yeah, knowledge, I mean, of what's happening too.
It would be an interesting study of the book of Genesis had it included the conversations between Jacob and Joseph, the teaching that Joseph had before he left.
Right, which were
Because
probably
they're-
much more than the brothers got.
Probably because he's closer.
Younger.
He is the older son of, of the love of Jacob's life. And he's enough removed in age from his older brothers that, yeah, he's gonna be with his dad alone before Benjamin was born. Much more than any of those were. For one thing, Jacob's not on the run anymore.
But also, I have been under the understanding too that he has received knowledge from God too, what I'm saying, which, not just from Jacob. I mean, you think that while he was in prison, he kind of had an inkling of what's going on.
Oh, I think it begins before that. I think it begins at the point of sale.
Okay,
I
right,
believe
okay.
It works through his life, as steward of Potiphar's house, in the jail, before Pharaoh.
But
And
at
the
the
reason
same,
why is he states definitively to his brothers, you meant it for evil, God sent me.
Exactly.
Or did it for good, and tells him why God did it.
yeah,
The two dreams of the sheaves and the stars and the moon and the sun are going to say that. And he says it definitively. God did it. And he did. So yes, there is a communication. I'm guessing there is a prayer life. Before this book is written, I don't know how God spoke to them other than when he tells,
Exactly.
tells Aaron and Miriam, there's a prophet among you or one who is spiritual, I'll speak to him in visions and in dreams with my friend Moses. It is not so. So I have a feeling that the sheaves and the stars and the sun and the moon are not the only dreams he had.
yeah. that's
They're the ones we know about. When we talk about fellowship among the saints, what we have fellowship with actually is, we have fellowship one with another. That's us and the Lord Christ. That fellowship. And then as that is recognized communally, we have fellowship with each other. That's the body. We are the bones and the flesh of Christ's body until he returns in the glorified body. But what we fellowship with in the physical is what's happened at this meal. We fellowship only with what we are shown. Now there is a fellowship that Joseph has with God that we're not privy to. I have a fellowship with God to which you're not privy to, and I'm hoping that you do too, that I'm not privy to. Because he's the God of the individual. His church is a plural noun. It's a number of individuals. It's not a building, it's not a list of names, it's people who are his body, baptized into it.
Well, another thing which I thought, like when I thought about when Rick was talking, is
He talks a lot.
Well, you know, we're taught that he had this communication with God, but he also was real human in the way is, hey guys, if that's the way I'm going to be second in command here, you're going to have to remember me to Pharaoh about how I interpret your dreams. Don't forget me down here.
Well, this is kind of the interesting thing. What in the scripture leads you to believe he realized at that point that he would be?
Why wouldn't he?
All he knows is that his father and his brothers are going to acknowledge he has the blessing. That's what that is about.
Well,
And that blessing has been in that family before there ever was a Pharaoh.
yeah.
And he knows that too.
So maybe not.
But why would they bow down to him then, if he didn't know that he would have authority?
No. What I'm saying is, up until this is, and who knows when that revelation is given to Joseph, but up until it is, Joseph knows that the blessing, not the birthright, the blessing will come to him, because the one who has the blessing to give, which is Jacob, bows to him. And Jacob will physically bow to him when he gives the blessing.
But like,
See, and those
why
guys-
would they have bowed to him? Unless he had been in a position.
Because
that
the
he-
one who holds the blessing is going to be honored by his brethren, or better be. Now, up until this point, do you see any New Testament types springing out of here? Out of the life of this prophet?
Oh yeah.
When he goes out to his brothers, at that point the 10 brothers, and they see him coming and, okay, we're going to fix his little red wagon, and we're going to throw him in the pit, and now I'm going to kill him. Okay, we'll sell him to the Ishmaelites. And he came unto his own, and his own received him not. That's John's gospel. There's your type. And Jesus said, I am sent unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And then he weeps over Jerusalem, and he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how oft I would have hovered thee as a hen hovers a chicken. Do you think Joseph would have had him come down any sooner if he could? They didn't have to wait up there in Canaan until they were starving to death to come down there and strike the deal. These people are merchants, they're traders. Now he's going to ask them not to tell the Egyptians that. No, we just trade in sheep and cattle, and we kind of smell like the dung heap a lot, so you probably want to keep your distance. But these are, and when they get down there, and when you see Jacob and Pharaoh meeting, they meet as equals. This guy is known.
Oh, Jacob.
He may not have been known by name, but Pharaoh knows there is a guy up there that even the Mesopotamian kings leave alone, because his grandfather slaughtered a bunch of them, who took one nephew. These are known stories in that, well, they're histories. They're known. Well, here comes this old man limping. I don't suppose Pharaoh would have gotten what he had with that. Halting on his staff down to Egypt and out of bread. See any other manifested prophecies here? See
Being
any other
sold,
types? See any other type?
being sold for so much money.
He's thrown into the pit by his brothers. Typifies the grave. Okay, who arises from the grave and then is caught up to the right hand of the majesty on high? And who is now Pharaoh's right hand? See who he's typing? See why he is so long suffering? You see why he is forgiving?
That's an important comment that you just said. That
Well, I
he
hope
is
it wasn't the
Pharaoh's,
only one. I hope I'm
Well,
just dripping with importance here.
every word. But he is Pharaoh's right hand. Now, we don't see that. They don't ever say that.
I am become a father to Pharaoh.
Yeah. Well, we haven't read that yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess you just did. But,
Well, I figured you
I
knew what
am-
they look like now.
yeah.
Pastor.
But that idea of right hand isn't positional, like standing here.
No.
I mean, it can, but that represents something.
Yes, being at the right hand,
The
when
authority.
we see that in the New Testament, the right hand of the Majesty on high, that's a euphemism for,
Authority.
this is the one who acts in the power and authority of his Father.
Doesn't mean he sits
Yeah.
there.
No, it's
it's not
just
positional.
authority.
No, it's relational. For
That's a
instance,
big thing.
when
What
Joseph
he
goes
said.
out in the chariot and the trumpets blow and they say, bow the knee, he's not at Pharaoh's right hand. He's in the chariot.
He is Pharaoh's right hand. That's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, that was with me, see, that's the strong hand.
Okay.
I'm guessing the Pharaoh
I
was
know.
right-handed. Was there a subliminal thing going on here?
No, I'm just saying, we, in the New Testament, we always, I think we get this image of big throne, little throne. Big
Right.
throne, right hand throne.
Right.
One throne.
Brother,
Right.
preaching to
Clarifying.
the choir, I'm just saying,
We don't want to get that image
don't
here.
get that image. There is no right.
No.
To
and-
God.
and as a matter of fact, when he stands before Pharaoh, oh, by the way, that's another type. He was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh.
Yeah.
When
Well,
Joseph
there's
Smith's
lots of
begins,
types,
he's 30
Jay.
years old. And Christ was how old when he's baptized by
30.
John?
30.
30.
And the ministry starts?
Yeah.
See how close those types are?
There's several.
Oh, yeah. Pharaoh says, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna put you over all of Egypt. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
That's
Yep.
the favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. That means if it's gonna be spoken, Joseph's gonna speak it.
Right.
If it's gonna be done, Joseph is gonna direct it. How did God create the earth? The heavens and the earth?
Spoken,
word,
spoken.
which is his son.
Exactly.
There's the right hand of power. And then finally, he will physically manifest this prophecy. Well, actually, it's not a prophecy, it's a statement of fact. All power is given unto me. And that's when that name goes higher, even than his father's name.
So powers.
And when he accomplishes everything in that capacity, then he turns around and he offers it all back to his father. Here's the way it was when you first created it. Joseph is just beginning that redemptive story by bringing his brothers and their wives down to Egypt because they will come out as the vessel that produces the Christ of God. They become Israel. And as you read through the 43rd, the 44th, the 42nd, even beginning back as late as early as the 37th and 38th chapters, I want you to notice how God, in writing this word, uses interchangeably for a while, and sometimes even in the same verse, the name Jacob and Israel. Now, it's God who gives him the name of Israel, the prince who prevails with God. And it's his mother that gave him the name Jacob, supplanter. I would have preferred Israel myself. But when God speaks, when he writes it in narrative, and that narrative voice is being used, when he's talking about the man standing there, it's Jacob. When he's speaking prophetically and proleptically, it's Israel. And at this point, when they bow, when Jacob comes down, all Israel is there.
Yeah.
It's not a nation, but physically. But it is in seed form. It's in those men. And at that point, God is ready to let them incubate in
They do.
Egypt for 400 years, because the cup of the Amorites is not quite full, and then he'll bring them up, and they stumble a little bit. You got the 40 years and so forth of that wandering. A little more child training, a little more time to mature, and then they go in to conquer. Under Joshua, but it begins here. Now, just looking ahead a little bit, can you also see that promise that was given to Abraham, I'll bless him who blesses thee, and I'll curse him who curses thee? Nobody blesses Joseph like Pharaoh did. And look what happens to Pharaoh. In the middle of the worst famine and drought in Israel's history, the money starts pouring into Pharaoh.
He
And
becomes
eventually
very
the
rich.
cattle is going to come to, all the cattle is going to come to Pharaoh. All of the land except which belongs to the priest is gonna come to Pharaoh. And finally, the people themselves. They all are owned by one guy. And this guy is smart enough, and probably his memory is good enough to remember, I'm the guy who put the smart guy in charge. He knows where the blessing comes from. Now, God says, I will bless who blesses you. Now, remember when Jacob comes down and he's presented to Pharaoh, Jacob blesses Pharaoh.
We'll read it.
We'll get
Yeah, I was gonna say,
We'll get there. We got 10 till, we got a service upstairs is ready to start. Are there any questions or anything from last week that needs to be cleared up? Have I confused anybody enough this week to prompt a question or a comment or two? Besides Linda, who's looking daggers at me because
No,
she's
I'm
not
just
sure that
going-
Rachel is.
I'm just gonna be a Brian.
Godliness with contentment is great gain.
Well, that's what I understand. And I'm also kind of glad to hear that reluctance because I don't want anybody to accept something because I said it, because I can't make anything true about this word. This word is going to be revealed to you by the Spirit that wrote it, and I'm just a bystander.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Has it been a help so far? All right.
Yes, it has been.
Frank, would you close the prayer for us, please?